World Service, it's time for Witness. On January the 15th, 1966, a small group of Nigerian army officers launched the country's first ever coup, killing many of Nigeria's civilian and military leaders. Alex Last has been speaking to one of the soldiers who took part.
In the name of the Supreme Council of Revolution of the Nigerian Armed Forces, I declare martial law.
The basic plan was to overthrow the government of the Federation of Nigeria. I thought I had had a rendezvous with my destiny.
In January 1966, 27-year-old Ben Bullier was a captain in the Nigerian army. Trained at Sandhurst in Britain, he was among a small group of young, educated officers who were to carry out Nigeria's first ever coup.
But I saw things going wrong in Nigeria, terribly wrong. I was an impressionable young man, and I thought it was our duty. We must have a break with the past.
Nigeria was then a federal state with 4 semi-autonomous regions which ran along old political, ethnic and religious fault lines. In the 6 years since Nigerian independence, the country had seen controversial elections, growing corruption and outbreaks of ferocious political violence. In the mid-60s, a group of middle-ranking army officers decided to act. Captain Ben Bullier was brought into the plot when he was posted to the army base in Kaduna, the capital of Nigeria's powerful northern region.
When I got to the officers' mess at Kaduna, I met a number of officers, and of course the air was actually stirring with rumors about coup or no coup. They wouldn't say, would you like to be part of it? They will first of all sample your opinion as to what was going on in the country. If you spoke against what was happening, they would know you would go with them, and that's what happened.
Were you excited about this plan? Were you worried about it?
Naturally, I had to be worried. Taking part in a coup, particularly if it had failed, would mean, getting lost in the process. But I didn't mind because I saw Nigeria going down the drain.
To carry out the coup, small groups of officers and men would form hit squads to hunt down Nigeria's civilian and military leaders while they slept. They would strike in a few key regional cities and in Lagos, the federal seat of power. Ben Bullier and the other plotters in Kaduna were led by a popular charismatic major, Chukwuma Nzogwu. Their main target in the city was the country's most powerful politician, Sir Ahmadu Bello, known as the Sardauna, who was the premier of the northern region and the leader of the country's largest political party.
It started about 2 a.m., 15 January 1966. I had already been given my task, go and seize the brigade headquarters, which I did with facility, if I may say so. Take over radio stations, mount roadblocks. So once I was going down, I saw Nzogwu with some troops going into Ahmad Bello's place. I was fighting. Somebody opened fire at them. He threw a grenade, which hurt him, broke into the place, and he killed the Sardauna.
About 2 o'clock in the morning, a section of the army, led by a major, broke into the Premier's house. The Premier himself was brought out, and as far as is known, was then shot against a wall in the courtyard of his house. His senior wife came out at the same time and I gather tried to intervene, and she was shot.
Did you discuss whether you would arrest people or whether certain people had to be killed?
Let me be honest with you. It was only once that the question of killing was mentioned to me. I was asked to go and arrest one of the senior officers at Kaduna and, of course, to shoot him. And I said, no, thank you, because I was an engineer officer and I would do only engineer jobs. There were actually disagreements. Some wanted people to be killed outright. Some others said, no, hold them hostages and negotiate. In the end, what was agreed upon was whatever you see on the ground will determine the action you take. For instance, somebody went to the brigade commander's house to have him arrested. The commander, Brigadier Demo Legun, pulled a gun, and this gentleman shot the brigadier. The wife dived in the process and got involved in the fatality.
So did you feel remorse?
It was a bad thing to kill a human being, but it was something we could not help.
Was there a feeling of relief once it was clear that you had succeeded in Kaduna?
It was mixed with concern for what was happening in Lagos, because Lagos was the seat of power, and we did not get any hint of what was happening in Lagos.
They were right to be concerned. In Lagos and the south, the coup had begun with a wave of killings. Top army commanders were murdered. The country's prime minister, Sir Tafawa Balewa, was among the victims. But despite the bloodshed, the number of soldiers involved in the coup was proving too small for the task. In Lagos, the head of Nigeria's army, General Agui Ironsi, escaped the hit squads, mobilized the bulk of the army, and began to put down the coup.
The vast majority of the Nigerian army remained completely loyal and are already taking all appropriate measures to bring the situation under control.
Federal cabinet ministers and army chiefs have been meeting here in Lagos this morning, and Lagos is firmly in government hands.
We did not know all that until some people started phoning us from Lagos, threatening us. One said he was going to bring us to our knees, but Nzogu was not that type of person to be intimidated anyway.
Wish you all good luck, and I hope you will cooperate to your fullest in this job which we have set for ourselves of establishing a prosperous nation and achieving solidarity. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.
But Major Nzogwu's resistance could not last. With key civilian leaders dead or missing, the federal government in Lagos signed over power to General Ironsi. Though not part of the original plot, Ironsi now became Nigeria's first military head of state. Just days later, the mutinous troops in Kaduna surrendered. Around the country, one by one, the coup plotters were rounded up and arrested. Eventually, they came for Captain Bullier.
Some other ranks burst into my office and they said, "Are you Captain Bembuli?" I said, "Yes." They said, "You're under arrest, sir." And I knew the game was up. I threw my hands up. They clamped handcuffs on me. But I must tell you, my troops were wonderful. They saw what was happening and they lined up to pay me the last respect, as it were, before I was taken to a Land Rover and taken to the airport and sent to prison.
The coup had failed, and yet it brought the Nigerian military into power, where it would stay for the next 3 decades. What's more, because both General Ironsi and almost all the coup plotters were ethnic Igbo from eastern Nigeria, and almost all those killed were non-Igbo from the north and west, intentional or not, many saw the coup as part of an ethnically driven conspiracy. It would set Nigeria on a path to civil war. Ben Bullier, freed from prison at the outbreak of that conflict, fought on the side of Biafra and became a colonel before being imprisoned again at war's end. He's now retired and lives in eastern Nigeria.
I had been haunted by these events, what had happened, why we failed, because actually, if I regret the coup, it's because it failed. Because Nzogu would have shown us how to treat people who are miscreants. It's unfortunate that today criminals are getting away with corruption and nobody is saying anything.
Colonel Ben Bullier, ending that edition of Witness by Alex Last.